It's March or April. It's April 24th, 2024, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I'm Gerissar, and WoW esports aficionado.
Hey guys, I'm Bigmoran, and I have officially, but unofficially, re-rolled to Assassination Rogue. And Jake is actually not here today. He has burrowed underground, like an elemental shaman typically would do in these trying times. But anyway, we're sad he's not here. But today we're going to be talking about something dark, grim, and scary. Of course, it's MMR.
Indeed. That thing that mostly people only complain about but don't actually talk about.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of obscure topic. It's kind of like this black box that exists kind of in the ethereal world of the Blizzard servers, and we don't really see it. What its true nature is, right? It's this hidden beast.
Indeed. And I think it's worthwhile talking about because, well, yeah, because nobody really talks about it. A lot of people, I don't think, truly understand it. Like, they know it's there and that, but I feel like there's a lot of nuance that I think should be talked about and covered, just to make sure that we understand it, and hopefully by the time we're done, everybody else understands it as well. Before we do that, though, I think why don't we get into the need, greed, and past first, and just like get the little pieces out of the way. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. As soon as I can click the button. Here we go.
This likely won't be a clean fight, so keep your distance, eh?
I am so professional at this now. You'd think after 200 episodes, every time. Good old need, greed, and pass segment where I'm going to propose a scenario with 3 options related to WoW, and we get to play along, and I really hope that you, sitting at home, play along as well. So come on over to our Discord, or play along with us on Twitter, whichever way you want to give us your take on the need, greed, and pass. But the topic for today is, I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but there's a whole bunch of news that came out of the War Within. And of course, the data miners have been pulling all wonderful pieces of information out of all the data files they got. And one of them was for the rated battleground, Blitz, actually. It looks like they're going to have some titles. And one of them is a seasonal one. I think they're calling it Strategist, which, yeah, that's okay. But I thought, maybe we could come up with something better. So I brainstormed a little bit, and the ones I came up with were Blitzed, Battled, or Teamster. So if you could choose, I guess maybe this is a little self-serving. Maybe you think Strategist is better than those ones, Big. But if it wasn't going to be replaced, which one would you replace it with?
So the 3 options were Blitzed,
yeah,
Battled,
yeah,
and what was the third one?
Teamster.
Okay.
So it'd be like Moran the Blitzed, Moran the Battled, or Teamster Moran.
So I know exactly which one I'm gonna need. So I'll go with that one first. I'm gonna go with Blitz.
Yep.
I don't know if this is a thing in Canadian slang, but blitzed, at least from my experience, means like drunk.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go with Blitz as the need because I think that's kind of funny. Bigmoran the Blitzed, that's a good title. Then Teamster. Teamster is kind of goofy.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with Teamster. I think it sounds kind of funny. Like I like these funny titles.
Mm-hmm.
Like a good title that in game that's kind of funny is like Salty. You can do a lot with that title, Salty. So I'm gonna need Blitz because it's the funniest one, and then I'm gonna agree on Teamster because it is also quite goofy. Battled, I understand, but it sounds kind of tough. But to me it sounds a bit corny.
All right. Well, I see like Battle Master's already taken, so I was like, yeah, it's a bunch of battles, so Battled. Okay. But all right, yeah. And that's why I picked Blitz, is just for that exact reason, is because yes, in Canada it also means you're you've had a little too much of something.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. This is okay. Yeah, shoot. So for me, I was gonna need on Teamster. I like it. I like the idea. It's kind of goofy. And then also it kind of goes back to that whole mafia thing, right? You know, the Teamsters.
Oh,
So
okay. I
yeah.
wasn't aware of that history of the etymology, I guess, of that word.
Oh, yeah. It was the union, the Teamsters back in the day, right?
Ah,
With
okay.
um, it was Jimmy Hoffa who ended up and that little whole story. Anyways, but yeah,
Oh,
so I was
cool.
gonna go with Teamster because it has that double entendre. It has that other thing, and you know, you always have to do everything as a team, even though our Battleground Blitz is solo queue, but you're still teaming. So I thought that'd be kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm gonna agree on Blitz because the Gerissar the Blitz sounds like something that I would carry for a while, and
Hey,
unfortunately, I would have to pass on Battled. But yeah,
that does sound like a title that they would put in game, like
right.
unironically, like Blitzed. I'm surprised that isn't some sort of title already, because
I'm kind of surprised
that's
too.
a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you think so. And once again, for you folks listening live, you can always pop into the Twitch chat and tell us what your thoughts are of those three. In the meantime, we are going to talk about some upcoming PvP events.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
All right, so I wouldn't say the first one is really an up and coming. It's more of an ongoing. It's the Arena League that we announced or talked about last episode. So the first events have been running. Sorry, they've been scheduled. I don't think they've actually run yet because from the looks of it, they are missing the signups. They just aren't getting the signups. So, like, people, let's do this. Let's get out there and help them. Obviously, I can't. I don't have an EU account. I don't know if you have an EU account. Do you, Big?
I do, but it's collecting dust. I don't know what the status of it is. I don't know where it is, you know. God
Yeah.
knows.
You probably have some night elf parked outside the Elwyn Forest Inn there or something.
Yeah. God knows, you know. I don't like to think about it. Right? You're asking too many questions that I don't think you want answers to.
All right, fair enough. Well, I do know that we have a number of people that listen to the show from the EU, so yeah, go sign up, click on the links, go check it out, and maybe you'll get some games, get some fun game time. All right, the other things that are going on, Raider IO is hosting their Pro-Am charity event. So this is a Mythic Plus event, usually a really good watch. And if you are into Mythic Plus and you want to, you can sign up, register on Raider.io, and there's a possibility you'll be picked up and be playing with the professionals. And like really, there's some professional people. And if you're not, go and watch the show. Make sure you donate to the charity. It's a great event, and give them your love. And last but not least, another Mythic Plus event is the Liquid Eve Ascension Tournament. We talked about this before. It is for gender minorities only, typically women, and that's all the team can be made up of is gender minorities. And this one's going to be a great push style as well. So they all start at with a similar level key, and they have to push those keys as high as they can, and they get points based on key level, completion, and completion time. So yeah, so that one, signups are starting on the 17th of May, and the tournament itself will broadcast on the 29th of June. So if you are within that minority, and that sounds like something you want to try to do, by all means, sign up, give it a shot. Should be a fun go. And that's about it. I think that's probably the fastest intro segments we've done.
Yeah, that was quick. You could say we blitzed through that.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Speaking of other things I like, let's talk about MMR.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
Uh, Dad jokes for the win. Thanks, Big.
Yep.
All right, so MMR, matchmaking, matchmaking rating.
Rating.
So what to you, like, what does MMR mean to you? How is it so important in the game, and how does it affect our ability to climb the ladders?
So MMR, I think the most simple definition I could possibly give is MMR is an estimation that the game makes of what your rating should be. So if you are if you say you have whatever MMR you have, if you're winning more than you're losing, your MMR is going to go up because the game starts thinking that that's what your rating should be. If you start losing a lot, your MMR is going to go down because that's what the game thinks your rating should be. And it's kind of like a rubber band almost, where it's sort of pulling your current rating in some direction, either a positive direction, negative direction, or even keeping neutral. And that's all kind of contingent on a few different things, but I guess win-loss is probably the most obvious. So if you're winning more than you're losing, your MMR goes up. If you're losing more than you're winning, your MMR goes down. And again, it's just an estimation of where the game thinks your rating should be. I think that's, I don't know if that's a useful way to think of MMR, but to me, I think that makes the most sense.
I think that does make sense, and I think that's important because that's where the separation is. There's, you got your character rating, your CR, and then your MMR, and the two are kind of different, like you said, because character rating is where you actually are, and like you said, then MMR is where the game thinks you should be.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part there is, while MMR is tied to your character, it's also related to your teammates and your opponents, right?
Yeah, so MMR changes, the changes that happen to your MMR, depend on the relative difference between your MMR and your opponent's MMR.
Mm-hmm.
So a term that I've heard Venruki use on stream when he plays Solo Shuffle is he says, "Oh, I'm siphoning the enemy healer's MMR." So what that means is, say you're in Solo Shuffle,
Mm-hmm.
you see a little on the bottom right of the score screen, you see two numbers. You see your MMR and your roll average MMR. So that roll average is an average of your MMR and the enemy healers or enemy DPS's average MMR. And so when he says I'm siphoning, that means his MMR is lower than the roll average, which means if he goes 3-3 or better, he's going to siphon. Basically, he's going to steal, like life steal for warlocks, the enemy healer's MMR. Now it's basically going to swap. So now he's going to be the one, if he wins the lobby or goes neutral, his MMR will be at least as good, if not better, than the enemy healer's MMR.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the key to understanding. I know there's a lot of things we can talk about when it comes to MMR, and I'm sure we're going to do that in just a moment, but there's a lot of confusion when it comes to, specifically healers when they queue Solo Shuffle and they go 3-3.
Yeah.
And sometimes they lose MMR when they go 3-3. They're like, how the heck did that happen? Well, it's because the enemy healer sort of siphoned off some of their matchmaking rating because the game expected someone to be winning in that lobby and those expectations were not met. So the game sort of makes an adjustment. So it's kind of a confusing system, but it's a bit layered. And then there's this whole thing about inflation that we're going to probably discuss here in a second, which adds to the confusion. Yep. And inflation is a few different things happening at once. It's not just one thing.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Okay, well, what? Because that was going to be my next thing. Is then there's the inflation that comes in, and how Blizzard has this little technique that they use to try to, so instead of doing a rating decay where they if let's say you're sitting on a certain rating and you're not playing, instead of you losing rating, they instead inflate MMR. They add some base numbers to it. Is that right?
Yeah, so inflation is two different things simultaneously. So
Okay.
there's what I would call natural inflation and there's artificial inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So natural inflation for MMR works exactly like inflation does in economics, right? So in economics, inflation refers to how prices are increasing, which is a function of the amount of money in the money supply. So you inject the money supply with more cash, there's going to be increased prices, right? And that's something that we might have experienced in real life. And it might not be an obvious mechanism, but it's how it generally happens, right? Say you gave everyone in the United States $10,000.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to inject a lot of money into the money supply, and now suddenly stores can maybe start charging more for things, right? If everyone has more money.
Mm-hmm.
So natural inflation when it comes to World of Warcraft is simply a function of how many players are playing. So if you have more players playing Arena, that means there's more rating that can be distributed more frequently. So that's key to understanding natural inflation, right? So that's typically why we see, and we saw this in Dragonflight. The first season in Dragonflight, people got insanely high rated compared to season 2 and season 3. And some people might say, oh, well, Blizzard was inflating MMR more at that time, and we'll get to that sort of inflation in just a second. And while that might be true, I think it's also true that a lot more people were playing.
Yes.
And because of that, there was more rating to sort of go around, right? And it was being distributed more frequently. So the more players that are playing, the higher the natural inflation is going to be for matchmaking rating. So that's one part of it. So then the second part, which is what people typically refer to when they talk about MMR inflation, is this sort of artificial inflation that Blizzard controls.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I believe Halinka described it in an interview in Shadowlands is they aren't necessarily adjusting the high end of the ladder. What they want to do is adjust the midpoint of the ladder. So what the average rating should be. So Blizzard likes to keep average player rating around 1500 to 1600. And if you go to Drustfar right now, you can see, I'm sure it needs to be updated because it's a new season, but in a few weeks from now, you can go to Drustfar and there's a rating distribution curve in the PvP stats tab. So you can see it's a bell curve, right? So there's very few players who are below 1000 rating, and then 1100, 1200, all the way up to about 15 to 1600. That number climbs, right? Then you get to the peak of the bell curve, and then beyond that, the number kind of goes down a bit. Now there's a jump. There's a weird jump at 1800, and that's because people collect their elite sets and sort of dip out.
Yeah.
Then it goes back down, and then you get to the rank 1 ratings, and then that's the other end of the bell curve. So when Blizzard is inflating MMR, what they're just doing is they're simply moving the the peak of the curve to the right. So they're wanting sort of average player ratings to be higher.
Okay.
So I think what that means is the people who benefit the most from MMR inflation are people who are about the average rating. They can expect to see the biggest gains from, well, who are on the left side of the bell curve. They can expect to see the biggest gains from that shift. And I think you see less of a shift sort of on the right-hand side of the bell curve, especially towards the extremes.
Okay.
And yeah, so I think that's why you see
That
these
makes sense.
players on Twitter complaining, "Oh, my MMR is capped." Well, yes, and it's capped, and it might be going up gradually, and you might not be seeing the inflation that other players are seeing.
Yeah. I almost akin that that inflation, that added number that Blizzard does, similar to when the government increases minimum wage.
Yeah, I think that might be a, right, that's a classic example that's given in economics with like supply and demand, right?
Yep.
And labor markets, right? If you increase if you set a price floor,
Mhm.
right, it's going to shift the the uh, the curves, right, in some direction.
Yep.
And so yeah, that's basically what happens with MMR inflation. But I think the thing people don't really realize is how important the sort of natural inflation is to
Hmm.
that the like MMR, right? If more players are playing, that generally means that there's going to be high MMR sort of passively.
Yep.
And yeah, and I think, geez,
I I feel important to chime in here is because you
yeah,
made mention about the 1800 and people dipping out, and that has that little weird spike happen on the bell curve. But
yeah,
that is actually that greatly impacts that higher end, because now that's people taking the inflation out of out of the MMR economy. No different than if somebody took like $1 million out of the economy and stored it into a mattress or something like that. Like nobody's ever going to see it. Nobody's going to be able to benefit from that stash, or it's just it's removed completely from the ecosystem. And I think
right.
that's also something where, it, as players get to their goal and they decide they don't want to do that anymore, then nobody else can siphon from them, and it just robs the ecosystem of those points.
Yeah, I think describing it in terms of like an ecosystem makes a lot of sense, right? It's sort of like if you think about those food chains or whatever, those graphs with all the animals, right? You have usually at the bottom you have like the grass and the insects and things like the plants, and
That's
then
where I live.
and then those get eaten by the birds, which get eaten by, right, I don't know, the foxes, which get eaten by some other animal, right? Everything sort of goes up. So if you sort of, if all the foxes stop queuing, right, and then the wolves have nothing to eat, right? It's so
Yeah.
you're exactly right. I think that's kind of a fundamental problem with the current reward system is that you get to a certain point, and for a lot of players, they really have no incentive to go any further, and that sort of shuts off the stream of MMR, down the river. And now suddenly the high end of the ladder can't really inflate like it should be inflating because people
Mhm.
just stopped queuing. So yeah, I think that's definitely a very big structural problem that should be addressed. I mean, I know they have like a 2100 you can get the enchant or whatever, and 2400 you get the tabard.
Yeah.
But the elite set is just so alluring to a lot of players that that's all they care
Hmm.
about, and they
Yeah.
just want that.
Well, I think also getting beyond 18, like cresting over the 2K mark is just too far for some people. It's too much energy and effort that they don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
I- yeah, it's interesting because
Hmm.
I I made this video recently. What went wrong with Dragonflight PvP, and
Yep.
I made a point that I sort of disagree with in this video, but it's like a, how should I say it? There's I think a dual-edged sword when it comes to rewards in
Oh,
World of
totally.
Warcraft, where I wish that players would just play for the fun of it. That's my belief. I believe that the end goal in playing WoW PvP is to just play for fun, play to, push yourself.
Yep.
The reality is that's not how a lot of people play WoW, right? There's a lot of people who just care about the shiny little thing that they
Hmm.
can collect at the end of their journey. And so when Zaryu actually made a reaction to my video, and he was saying, "Oh, like," because I made a point like, "Oh, maybe there should be more rewards along the way," and Zaryu was like, "No, I disagree. Like, players should play because the game is good. And it's like, well, yeah, I agree with that,
Sure.
but that's not the reality of things, for better or for worse. And over time, the game changes, and this is something that's a very hard pill for players to swallow. I think when it comes to WoW, especially players like me and you who have been playing the game for a long time. The game changes, the community changes, gaming as a whole sort of changes over time. And I think it's very apparent that right now in WoW, cosmetics and collectibles and what have you are a huge motivating factor for people playing the game. So any sort of incentive system has to reflect that. It can't just be, oh, the game is fun, go play it.
Yeah.
No, people won't do that, unfortunately.
That's like saying, like training a chicken to like push some buttons, and as they push the buttons, they get treats, and so it knows, then it learns how to push the buttons because it gets more treats, and then that's like saying, like trying to make it do new tricks and push more buttons without any more treats.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like you get so used to something, right? That
Exactly.
you have this expectation.
Yeah. Pushing buttons is fun. If it's just fun, then the chicken will do it. No, the chicken won't. The chicken doesn't care. It wants the treats.
And I mean, I'll be honest. Like even though I have this ethical stance when it comes to WoW, like play for fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I still like the collectibles, right? They're still quite fun to get.
I mean, there's a number of people that they will hop onto their glad mount and just sit there in a city and have people gawk at them because it's a shiny thing and it looks cool, and they're proud of earning that achievement.
Yeah, what's funny is I don't just to relate to a previous podcast. I think for me, I'm completely content with the collectibles I have.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like my prestigious Amani Warbear, right?
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up again.
Yeah. What's funny, by the way, is who I encountered in Arena the last week of the season?
Nope.
Was Choice.
Oh,
good old Choice.
Yeah.
And he didn't know it was me. And
Were you stealth? Is that why?
No. So it was me, there was another warrior in the lobby, and Choice. We were all in the waiting room. The warrior mounts up on Amani Warbear. I mount up on mine. And Choice says, "Wow, 2 Amani Warbears." And I responded, "Yes, very prestigious." And he didn't know it was me. But then afterwards, I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, man, I just played against you in Arena." He was like, "Oh, I thought that was you, like, talking about your prestigious Amani Warbear."
That's
so
funny.
For me, it's like I don't really care too much about the collectibles, but I understand why some people do. Like we all have collectibles.
Heck yeah. Right. It's kind of what sort of really makes the game, right? It's that RPG side to the MMO, and without it, I don't think WoW would be the same. So I'm okay with that. But I think back to MMR. I think there's one thing which we should actually correct is MMR is actually capped in RSS, though, right? In Rated Solo Shuffle, they said that they capped it after season 1.
Yeah, so that's another thing. So there's inflation, and then there's this cap, which you can kind of see. I used to be able to see quite easily on.
Is there a script you can run or something to see what your MMR is?
I think you can see your. I'm sure there's probably some script. I mean, you can just queue Arena and see what your MMR is.
True.
But the cap is something completely different. So that is literally a hard cap that Blizzard puts on matchmaking rating. And presumably the reason I think they do this is to prevent the highest end of the ladder from getting too ridiculous. So it might seem like a evil and sinister thing to do, but I think it's a very sensible thing to do.
But I don't think they
Because
cap 2s or 3s.
no, everything. I believe everything has a cap.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
geez, if there wasn't a 2v2 cap, I don't know if you've checked the 2v2 ladder every season, but there's two players, Dino and Magnus, who queue together every single season, and they like Dino usually has like a 90% win loss in 2v2, like something ridiculous, or they both have ridiculous win losses.
Yep.
And if there wasn't a cap to MMR, I mean, they would be like 4K rated, right? Like that. Like, yeah, like I'm sure you've seen those screenshots of like the players on like the Taiwan ladder who have. I don't know how they're doing that. That's its own. Jeez, God knows how that's happening. But you can see what might happen if there wasn't any cap. So I don't know. I don't know how those Taiwanese players are doing it. Jeez, God knows. But anyway, I think the cap is a very sensible thing.
Okay.
Because there's certain players who could play WoW all day and just pump up that cap to an absurd, or pump up their rating to an absurd peak. And say you're like a father of four who works 9 to 5 and has to feed his kids. Imagine you get home and you have to compete against people who can play all day and just bump up that rank 1 rating to absurd heights. So I think they kind of do that to respect players' time, if I had to guess, because things would just be too ridiculous otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, it would be ridiculous. I thought they capped RSS on purpose because after season 1 and that ladder was insanely inflated from all the people playing it, that they did that on purpose to keep it below threes, because they wanted threes to be the pinnacle, like the most difficult of it all. And I know there's a number of people that were concerned at the end of season 1 how they're trying to be prestigious and playing this pristine utmost difficulty of threes, and weren't able to get anywhere near, well, one, their rating that they were getting in like Shadowlands, and they were being out prestiged, I guess, by Solo Shuffle. So
I think, yeah, and I think well, another reason too is I think they want queue times to be faster in Solo Shuffle. So
yep.
if you put a cap, that sort of like bunches everyone together, right?
True.
I mean, if they didn't have a cap, then queue times would be absurdly long for players. Like, I think, ironically, capping MMR is probably the best thing they could do for queue times for the highest end of the ladder, right? If they didn't have that cap, say you're 3,500, I mean, you're going to be waiting in queue for 3 days, right? Like, I think players tend to freak out at these caps,
Sure.
but in some ways, I think it's beneficial to them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I can see it both ways. Like, I see it if I had reached, let's say, 3120 in season 2, and I can't even reach 3K in season 3 because that's where the cap is. Like, how can you say that you've improved, that you've done a better job, right?
Yeah, so that's an entirely different discussion, right? I mean, we can talk a little bit about that. I think that's a worthwhile conversation.
Yeah.
Right, because MMR caps, inflations, and whatnot are constantly changing from season to season. I think it does make progression as a player quite confusing. Towards the end of last season, Vinruki posted a tweet showing his Resto Shaman's current rating compared to his highest rating. So in Solo Shuffle, his highest rating was 2,700 from season 1.
Yep.
And his current rating was 2,100 in season 3, with a similar amount of games played. And he's like, well, I got better at playing Resto Shaman, but now I'm 600 rating lower than where I was when I started in season 1. This doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is just right? A problem of relativity, right? Ratings are only relative to each individual season, and the numbers are really hard to compare from season to season, right? 2100 in season 1 is completely different than 2100 in season 3.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that Blizzard should probably address at some point. And I think we've talked about this actually on the cast, like how would they do that? And it seems like percentage-based rewards are the most obvious solution to that, right? I mean, that's how Challenger, Rival, and Duelist and Gladiator used to work. I mean, it all used to be percentage-based anyway. And that seems like a more practical solution to that problem than anything else, right?
Mm-hmm. Speaking back actually to the whole bell curve thing, and that's basically where the percentages actually come from. I almost feel like it would be more beneficial if when you finished, you showed up as a dot on a bell curve and it kind of showed you where you were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be interesting. There's some things though, I don't know. Game design is a very complicated thing. I take it because there's some information that I don't think players want to know about themselves. The bell curve thing I think is interesting, but imagine, you feel very good about yourself. You're like, "Oh yeah, I'm hitting my goals. Let me see where I am." And it's like, "Well, geez. Oh my gosh, like I am on
I'm in
I
the
am
bottom
not
third. What?
I'm on the wrong side of this bell curve,
Yeah.
So I think maybe there's like, they might want to hide that. Maybe that's why they haven't gone completely to percentage-based rewards or gone back to percentage-based rewards, because maybe in some ways that makes players feel bad. I think ultimately they've made some crucial missteps in the way rewards have been structured. I mean, I truly believe it was a mistake to make Gladiator attainable the way it is. And maybe that sounds like an elitist thing to say, but there's people who, I see this all the time on the WoW subreddit, World of PvP subreddit, who want Gladiator to be 1800 or 2100.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just old, but I remember a time when like Gladiator was this big, massive, sort of built up achievement, and it still is for a lot of players. But man, when you get these crazy hyperinflated seasons like Shadowlands Season 2, the sort of value that Gladiator holds gets diminished, I think, in some respects, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think Gladiator should be this sort of exclusive little club, and having it be a static number that changes from season to season is going to make that not feel as exclusive. And I mean, plus, I think the problem we were describing with players getting 1800 and stopping, I think also applies to players getting Gladiator. I think a lot of players probably get Gladiator and then maybe just stop.
Definitely.
So yeah, so if it were to go back to percentage-based thing, I believe it used to be top 1% of the ladder, I think.
I think so, yeah. So
Yeah,
point one was rank 1, and then 1% was
yeah.
the
And
Gladiator.
I think that tension, that suspense at the end of the season was always fun. At least it was for me. Back in my day, getting Gladiator. It was like,
I counter that though, because you don't know if you earned it or not until end of the season. Versus with a fixed one, you know that when you get 1500, you get the mount. You know that when you get 1800, you get the elite. You know that at 2100, you get the enchant.
I will counter your counter. So you used to be able to use websites to know if you were above the glad cutoff.
Well,
it was always
those were never accurate though. That's an estimation, because the API limits what you see.
I think they were pretty accurate. I don't remember them ever being like super far off. And so that's what I mean. There is this tension,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like, you know on Christmas Eve that there's going to be presents waiting for you on Christmas morning, right? Santa Claus came overnight, but you
For those
just
that believe, yeah.
you don't know what he gave you, right? And that was
Mhm.
kind of the fun little tension that you got with the old system.
Yeah.
Is if you're well above the cutoff, you could sleep happy that night.
Mhm.
If you're below the cutoff, you still had optimism. You're like, well, what if some teams above me got reset and that bumped me up?
Yeah.
Reset for cheating or whatever. So I don't know. I kind of always I liked the old system in some ways because it gave you that suspense, which I always thought was fun. It's, and plus, I mean, the other thing too is there used to be I think a 2 week gap in between seasons, so
Yeah.
you didn't know for 2 weeks, which is pretty crazy. It's like, oh my god, I can't sleep.
Yeah. That's true. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think for some people, yeah, sure, the suspense is good. For other people, they want to know, or they want to know definitively right at the minute, right? They want to know if they
Yeah.
made it or not. And I I would hate for somebody to think that they were like, okay, I think I'm safe, right? And then because if you're like if you're fighting to get the rating and you're like winning, you just get up to near it, but then you lose a game, you get bumped back down by because the amount of points you win versus the amount of points you lose is wildly different. Like earning 6 points on a win but losing 40 something points on a
Oh
loss
yeah.
is painful, right? So I can see like
Yeah.
if you're struggling to get there and you're like, okay, I think I just got, and then find out you're like 3 points shy of a cutoff, and you find it out 2 weeks later because like I would I would want to throw my keyboard.
Well, let me tell you some lore, okay? Do you know the expression rank one duelist?
No.
So rank one duelist was a term people used to use to refer to the person or team who was literally right below the glad cutoff. Like they were the highest rated duelist team.
Oh,
So some
yeah.
little lore about Dilly Poo is in the final season of Kata, and I believe it was Missa Pandaria season 1. Dilly Poo was a back-to-back rank one duelist. So he
Oh.
was a rank one duelist at the end of Kata on
Mm-hmm.
the Nightfall battle group, and then I believe he was also the rank one duelist on BG9 in the first season of Mop, which was really funny to think. Like in hindsight, that's like really funny to think about.
That's
But
painful though.
yeah, it's
I think
painful.
I think I remember hearing about that too. Now you mention it, that yeah, he's like, God, so close.
Yeah, so
Oof,
close. But
oof.
yeah,
I don't know, man. I guess I think the thing that really makes it like maybe for 2400, like, is that too high or is it just high enough? And do they need like? And then there's the whole wins thing, right? Like the number of wins you need. Like should because that's only for rank one, or is that for glad as well? We have to have the
it's for
50
Glad
wins.
and Legend.
Okay,
You
so
need to win.
I don't
I
know,
mean,
maybe.
geez, that system really annoys me.
Hmm.
I've been above 2400 every single season so far in Dragonflight,
Yeah.
but I just don't like I don't play WoW enough to really care about grinding out those wins. And to
Hmm.
me, it's just like it's too tedious. Like
Well,
even
but this is where you can
it's
make
just too
MMR work for
annoying.
you, though. You know about that little trick, right?
Yeah, I mean, players have been doing that for ages. If you're talking about like, say, I think it was that Feral Druid posted a screenshot where they were 2900 rating and they got their Gladiator achievement with at
Mhm.
2.2k MMR.
Yeah.
So people have been doing stuff like that for years. Like infamously, there was this Death Knight
Hmm.
who I will not name. But there was this Death Knight who did something very similar one season to get rank one, where they just were right below that rank one cutoff, and then they queued with their like 2K rated friends
Mhm.
and just grinded out like 1 and 2 point wins for a while. Until they got above the cutoff. I mean, it's something that people have been doing for ages.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I think in solo shuffle you have to win 100. Yeah, you have to have 100 wins above
Okay.
2400 to get legend. I don't know what it is in Gladiator. It's 50.
Mhm.
But I mean, in solo shuffle, 100 wins. I mean, especially if you're a DPS. I mean, most people tend to gravitate towards somewhere around a 50% win loss. So that's like you're looking at 180 to 200 games probably of solo
Well,
shuffle to get that legend, and I mean that's kind of tedious.
That's 100 rounds.
It's like what 100 divided by 6, whatever that. But I mean,
Yeah.
like you need 100 wins of. It's not rounds. It's like it's scoreboard wins.
I thought
So
it was.
say you.
I thought it was 100. It's not 100. It's not like 100 games where you. It's like
It's not 100 times queuing solo shuffle. It's like when you enter. So say you enter one solo shuffle, you get 6 wins. That counts as 6 towards your 100.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I meant. So it's
So
yeah.
still, I mean, you're looking at 200 rounds potentially, and geez, I don't want to do the math, but that's a lot of. If you're a DPS, that's a lot of time sitting in queue.
45-minute queues.
Yeah, let me just do that really quick. So 200 times let's say 20-minute queues. You're looking at 4,000 hours divided by. No wait, that can't be right.
4,000 minutes.
4,000 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Divided by 60.
4,000 divided by 60.
400 divided by 6.
You're looking at
6 hours, 7 hours.
4,000 divided by 6. Wait a second. I don't know. Anyway, you're looking at a long time. I'm sitting in queue. That's the point. You're sitting in queue for a while.
True. True.
And I don't know.
My napkin says you are correct. That's a lot of queue time.
Yeah,
anyway.
Anyway.
All right. So I want to MMR. So I remember like back in the day before MMR really existed, we always used to, if you started a season, or you started a brand new tune, you're at 1,500 rated CR, and then you either gained or lost from there, depending. So it was really painful because you like fresh new tune, trying to grind gear. You didn't really have anything because you just leveled or whatever, and then you enter into arena and you just get smacked hard for like an ungodly amount of games until you're like low enough where you're also with the rest of the people that are just trying to leveled and whatnot, right? So I think MMR does something similar where you start at 0, but your MMR like starts at 1,500, right? Because that's the mid score, and then you're getting smacked down until you get down into where the game thinks you actually should be. Which I think is feels a little bit wrong. I think similarly though, and people found this where like let's say season 1 they played solo shuffle, they got let's say they got like 2K or something like that. They didn't play season 2, and then season 3 they picked up their tune just out of the blue, and boom, they're into a 2K rated match.
Yeah, so I know I was queuing my rogue yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and my rogue carried over MMR from the previous season. And I'm curious what happened to my other characters who I hadn't played in a while.
It all
carries. They should in theory they should all carry.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird too because what's really annoying, so there's a situation you sometimes get what you're exactly describing. And I hate to I hate to blame other players in lobbies. I typically try to be nice to other players, but what's really annoying is say you are queuing, well, it doesn't matter what rating. Say you're queuing at 1,800, okay? And you get into a lobby, you open up the score screen, and you see that someone on your team or someone in the lobby is 0 rated.
Yep.
And you look at them, they're in greens, and like say this happens in the middle of the season, they're in greens. You look at their win-loss, again, they have 0 games played. You're like, oh boy. Like,
yep.
here I am playing at 1800. We just got someone fresh off in like fresh making adult or boosted this character or they haven't logged onto this character for a while.
Yeah.
Also, I think there's some weird sort of Smurf MMR in Solo Shovel. I can't confirm that, but it always felt like there might be. Anyway, so yeah, that's always a really annoying thing is when you're in a high rated lobby and someone had carryover MMR from the previous season and they just leveled an alt, or I'm sorry, they just started playing that alt again. It's like, man, this is gonna be painful. This is gonna suck.
Yeah, chances are they shipped a bunch of honor over to their alt and just geared it out quickly and jumped into Solo Shovel. I understand it. Like, I mean, if we're talking like the beginning of a season, like right now, we just started season 4, right? It makes sense. You had your rogue, you got it to 1800 at the end of the season. You want to, day one, you want to start queuing. You have 0 CR. It makes no sense to queue you up against somebody that only made 1500 or 1400 last season. Like, no, it makes sense to put you against people that have a similar skill as you. And, you're all chasing that gear the same. Maybe you went and got some bloody token gear. Maybe you're just queuing with the stuff you had, the carryover, whatever. And then off you go, right? And you're queuing to those people. You all have similar skills, so gameplay feels about the same. And that totally makes sense. I think the part where it gets weird is just like you said, middle of the season. So let's say you ignored your rogue, you went, or middle of the season, you're like, okay, I'm done playing my rogue. I want to switch back to my druid, and you hop onto it, and you're now jumping in with fresh gear for the season while you're facing off with teammates that have all geared up and everything, and they're maxed out, and you're like,
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I know. So I've only played my rogue so far these past few days. I haven't touched my druids. And I know if I don't play my druids consistently, it's going to be really annoying. Because if I don't keep up on gear, that means, the very first time I queue, I'm going to be in full honor gear. And people are going to already have their, tier sets, weapons, whatever, great vault stuff. And I'm going to be 2400 MMR, and I know I'm probably going to lose, right? And that's not fun. I mean, I think
it feels bad.
Yeah. I think not the consequence of not resetting MMR is that you get into situations like that where it's like if you fall behind, the next time you queue, you're just going to be miserable. So like an MMR reset in between seasons kind of makes sense. Plus, I mean, geez, I hate to give the forum posters what they want to hear, but oh my gosh, it's really fun playing in low MMR lobbies when you're so much better than everyone else and you're just smashing everyone. Oh, that's fun. I joke because the people in the forums are like, "Oh, these rank 1 players, they just want to grief these low." Like, no, it's like, no, we don't really want to do that, but it's like fun. I will say it is fun.
It is fun. No different than like it's fun watching like a Harlem Globetrotter come into like some high school gymnasium and just waltz over top of yay, my team won the state provincial or the state finals, and just get completely raffle stomped by the Globetrotters. So I think that there are people though that that's their enjoyment, is just raffle stomping on people and feeling good, and feeling good about themselves. And so there are people that will purposefully lose a bunch of games, depress their MMR, lose a bunch of CR to go down to those 1500s, so then they can feel really good about themselves. No different than how some kids in high school will sometimes wander over to the elementary school playground and feel like giants amongst little people because they think it's fun. It's human psychology. Gotta love it.
I just think it's funny when Peekaboo is queuing viewer twos, and you can clearly see he's just there to play with his viewer. I mean, it's just content. That's all it is. It's just content.
Yeah.
And
he gets those screenshots with a selfie cam.
I think that's just it's still just content. And
True.
so I think people, people Peekaboo would just accept an invite from whoever's watching a stream, right? Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what rating they are. They could be 2400, they could be 1800, they could be 1200. And it's just really funny because they do go on Reddit and people are like, "Oh, Peekaboo is he's intentionally trying to torment he's gatekeeping me, like preventing me from getting my rating." I'm like, no, he's probably not. Like, he's just like a streamer who's making content, trying to pass the time.
I remember queuing up. Abstract was streaming, and so I ended up joining on. I think it was on my DK, like freshly, just around some honor gear, like total fresh, and we were playing twos, and the first game, like I couldn't kill anything. I didn't have the stats to do any damage. Really, it was so stupid. And then I think the second game, we ended up queuing into Zaryu, who was doing the same thing. And I just got blown up by Zaryu. It's like, okay, I'm done. But yeah, I feel that. Like, I think it's knowing what you're doing and knowing what you're queuing into. I think if you're trying hard, like really trying hard, like again, it's like the high school team trying really hard to play basketball, but then just getting raffle stomped by the Harlem Globetrotters. It gets tiresome pretty quick, right?
Yeah,
And
well, I will counter by saying it's, I think, a useful experience if you genuinely care about like improving and gaining rating. I think it's good to get bodied every now and then. And there's this sort of culture within like fighting games.
mm-hmm.
Like, if you ask any professional fighting game player, they'll tell you that like the first tournament they ever went to, they just got absolutely,
Oh yeah,
destroyed, right?
yep,
And because especially WoW players have like a big ego, and fighting game players also have gamers in general have big egos.
yep,
And so, say you're a competitive Smash Bros player, and you're beating your brother, you're beating your friends, and
yep,
you're like, "Dang, I'm pretty good. Like, I'm gonna enter this tournament. It should be pretty easy,
yeah,
And then you go to this tournament and you play against some nerd who just like absolutely, destroys you, four stocks you, and you go 0-2 in the tournament, you're out instantly. I mean, I think that experience is quite humbling, and for a lot of players, it's actually quite motivating. But I think
mm-hmm.
if you get stomped by Peekaboo on stream, I don't think the reaction should be like, "Oh, that's unfair." I think the reaction should be like, "Dang, like I want to be able to beat that. I want to be able to do
Yeah.
something against that." And of course, yeah, it's overwhelming, but I don't buy into this idea that like that's
Yeah.
preventing players from enjoying PvP. I don't think so.
I see both ways. Is that yes, that can be motivating if you can learn from it. If it just happens so fast that you don't understand what even happened, then now again back to the whole now you just lost 40 something plus rating, and then you're having to grind back up another 8 wins to get that. And if every other game you're running into a rank 1 player who's just making content and playing with viewers, that's not fun.
It is, yeah, I see that, and it's funny. So something you said that made um, my ears peak up. I don't know if I don't know if that's an expression. Is
No, if you're
don't
a cat.
understand is someone not understanding why they lost, and I
Yeah.
think that is a very interesting thing to say, because as someone who has been teaching WoW now for a very long time, I think it's very important for players to get to a stage in their PvP life where they can to truly understand why they lost a game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's where true like improvement really starts to happen.
Oh, for sure.
And so I know, like, if you play against Peekaboo, it can be overwhelming. It's like he's doing like a million different things really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you were to go back and watch that, your clip against him, and really slow down and sort of try to analyze the game, I think you can learn something very useful. And maybe it's hard to interpret losses as they happen, but if you go back and just watch, I mean, that's why they say, like, if you record your gameplay, that's a really good way to improve. If you go and
Oh,
then you go back and watch it. because I think getting to a point where you can understand why you lost a game is really, really, really important for players, and that's like a big hurdle. It's a very hard thing too. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's something people should try to do.
I think the hardest part with World of Warcraft is people look at the death log of the last 5 seconds and say, "Oh, well, I died because
Yes.
they blew me up with all these abilities." When the real answer is the reason why you died there was because 3 minutes or 45 seconds ago you blew your trinket
Right.
on and you're stuck in a CC, and your healer was, or your friend was also locked in CC because they blew their trinket and there's overlaps, but nobody sees that. They just see the oh, I died because I got blown up.
Yeah, I remember in a skill cap video a long time ago, I described that as like details deathlog syndrome, where people get really fixated on details. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing. In some ways, I think like the deathlog is not a very practical thing to look at. Players like to look at it, but I don't think it really helps them most of the time. It's just like makes them mad, right? To see that they got hit by a a
Lava, lava,
pyroblast or
lava.
something. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, but yeah, I wish people would focus less on that, because I do think it is not a very
True.
practical thing to pay attention to.
I think you're right. Focusing, I think, actually is a good thing. We should probably focus back to talking about MMR and all these other existential things and all
Yes.
these tangents we're going on. I think another thing which was confirmed by Holinka in a tweet years ago, and I saw that. So MMR doesn't reset and has never reset between expansion or between seasons in an expansion. It only resets after an expansion, and I think that's because the way he tweeted it is that MMR resets when you level. So
Ah,
so
that's
obviously,
interesting.
yeah. So I mean, like if you're let's say you're BGing on your way up as you level, then you're gaining MMR as you BG, because well, that's a bit of an assumption. There's a rumor. I think they confirmed it somewhat that there was like a hidden MMR for random BGs or random doing that stuff. I don't know if
Yeah.
it still exists or not. So assuming that that's the case, then of course every time so War Within starts, we all start leveling. As soon as you hit that first level, your MMR is going to reset, and then it just kind of keeps doing that until you get to max level, and then it can actually grow again. Um, I think that's interesting. I wonder if the way the system is built, that they can't reset RSS MMR. I am curious though if they could decay it. So if you haven't gained any MMR, or had any, you really gained any MMR, or had any movement on your MMR in a week, if they could, instead of artificially inflating it, do a deflation on your MMR, so that, case in point, if I if I pick up a tune in the middle of the season, I'm not
Yeah.
rolling right into an 1800, but I'm rolling into, let's say, like a 1500 or something like that.
Yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense. Um Geez, that's a good point. I'm sure they could do that. There's probably some reason they don't want to. I mean, they definitely, historically, they've had the ability to reset MMR in the middle of a season,
Yep.
which that had some very unintended consequences. Because it
Yep.
happened in Cataclysm, and I think it happened in some other expansion too, where they reset MMR like 3 weeks or 2 weeks into the season, and then no one on the high end of the ladder played again.
Yeah.
Because their rating was like unobtainable for the
Yeah.
rest of the season.
I
So that, I
remember
mean,
that.
they could definitely reset in the middle of the season. And now they have the ability to sort of inflate. So it would make sense to be able to I like that idea. That's something, if we ever get one of those rare dev interviews, that would be a good thing to bring up, because I think that solves a problem, like a very annoying problem. And it makes sense.
Indeed. Somebody's in chat saying they had to reset it because it wasn't decreasing when you lost, so it was only going up. Similar to what Mythic IO is.
Yeah. So
Which
yeah, well, I think
maybe that's the thing they should do is instead like change
no rating
it.
loss.
Yeah, so it's just It's like Mythic IO, where
That's
every season it drops back to 0, right?
that's a whole another conversation. Well, I guess it's not a whole other. It is
It's
relevant,
exactly
but
this conversation.
I think so. Here's my take on that because I've thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a reason they don't do that, and the
Oh yeah.
reason being is losing. Right? If you lose, that is more motivation to like. If you lose rating, that means you have to get it back. Right? That means you have to at least play 2 games to get back to the point that you would have been if you would have won that game. Right? Every one loss basically means you have to win twice now. So mathematically, it sort of works itself out that people will continue queuing if they lose and they want their rating back. Now, if you don't have any rating loss, you can kind of see where that might start encountering some problems. Like, you know, I mean, maybe you would play more since you don't lose anymore, but that the effect of losses would feel less, and that might make it so you don't need to queue as much. I don't know. It just seems it's that I think is touchy.
I think the difference there is that so similar to how we have MMR and CR, Mythic Plus has keystones and IO. So although you
Yeah,
don't lose IO, your keystone will deplete and it goes down a level. So this would be
I
similar
see.
to you wouldn't lose CR, but you lose MMR. And then
I
you'd
see.
have
So
to
like
win to gain your MMR back to get
the
back to
MMR is basically the keystone
yeah.
rating. Yeah, yeah, or the keystone, the key level. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
Maybe.
either. Yeah, who knows?
Well, there's people who get paid to make these decisions. I'm not one of those people, you know.
No, exactly. And maybe if those people are listening, they're like, dang it, those technically PvP guys, they nailed it again. We'll have to implement that.
There you
Because they do
go.
that so often, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
uh so MMR. So obviously we know now why it's there. We know how it impacts CR. We know how it impacts, it carries over season to season. Um I think the one thing that we kind of nuanced on it a little bit, but how there's your personal MMR, but then that leads into your team MMR.
Yeah.
And I think so for solo shuffle, it's really easy. You have, like I said, you have your personal MMR, and you have like the average MMR of the lobbies that you're in,
The role in the lobby. Yeah.
the role in the lobby, yeah. But in the rest of the rateds, so twos, threes, RBGs, and soon rated BGB, I think that's important. Where again, we hinted at it with the 2900 Feral that was queuing with 2 other players that were like, I think, what, 400 CR or something like that, like.
Yeah. They're
And then
fresh too. It looks like they're fresh characters. Yeah.
yeah, so they were playing at a 2100 level. So obviously that doesn't, the math there does, if it's just a linear, that doesn't math out, because if you have 2 players that are like, let's say 400, you have a 2900, like you should be well below 2100. So I think there's some additional math there to figure out where that team places, right?
I mean, with that particular team, I have no idea what that situation was like.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing we haven't really touched on that's a key difference between solo shuffle and threes 2v2 is the idea of placement games. So that's something that solo shuffle doesn't have from season to
No,
season.
you're right.
So Yeah, placement games. I mean, for those of you listening, the first 10 games you play in a season in a bracket, 2v2 or 3v3, are going to be placements, where you're generally going to be matched against people several hundred MMR below you. And the purpose of those placement games is for the game to sort of guess where you should wind up. So if the worst thing you can do is lose a placement game. I mean, that's happened to me before, and it always feels really bad because it's like, oh man, and then your MMR tanks typically. Now they don't have that in Solo Shuffle. I just realized, and I don't believe they have placement games or
No,
placement lobbies.
I think it's because it just assumes that you're like bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's only
Anyway,
the
don't
first
worry.
season. It's only first season, right? After that, the MMR carries over.
Yeah. So maybe that would be another solution to this problem we described. Instead of rating decay, maybe there could be actual placement games in Solo Shuffle. But I don't know. Jeez, I can see maybe why they don't do that, because when you're playing placement games in 2v2 and 3v3, you have you're playing with people presumably who kind of are motivated to win. Whereas in Solo Shuffle, I mean, if you're playing placements, it's just a completely random environment. So if you have a higher chance of just randomly losing, and then there goes your placement MMR. But I still think it's probably better than the current solution they have.
Maybe.
I don't remember what the original question was, to be honest. I randomly remembered placements. So what were we talking about?
I was talking about how MMR gets averaged over a team to figure out what the team's MMR is, rather than like it's not just a flat average. It's not.
Yeah, so with that Feral Dread, I don't know how they wound up at 2100. If I had to guess, there might have been some carryover MMR from the previous season plus placements. It was probably
Maybe.
I don't know what happens in that placement time period with MMR, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
because don't know.
I think there is one little elephant in the room that we haven't talked about though,
Yeah.
and that is levers.
Oh yeah, I'd.
So for
Jeez.
those also listening who don't know, if you're playing rated solo shuffle and you're looking like you're gonna lose, like you're gonna get 3 or less or worse, then if you leave, then you don't lose your MMR.
You'll lose 150 current rating, but you won't lose any MMR.
Exactly. So then when you go back into another game, you have lower CR, but you still have high MMR. So it places you in a situation where when you'll get a better lobby, you'll win back your CR really quickly, and probably gain some MMR, which will then put you higher and higher and slingshot you upwards. And that's
Yeah,
why you have people that are levering. And generally, yeah, okay, so you eat a debuff. You can't queue for however much time. But I'm pretty sure that debuff, that timer, counts down when you're offline. So all you do is just log onto another tune, play that for a lobby, and then switch back over, right?
yeah. Leaving is definitely an issue. Uh,
Oh, I know that.
because I mean, also the fact that it is someone in some cases beneficial for you to leave. It's a very rude thing to do. I
Well,
don't think anyone should do it.
screws over 5 other people.
Yep. It's a very selfish thing to do, but it's a very beneficial thing to do. That's the problem.
So I think that's ultimately one of the major issues for Arena is unless you're on a fixed team with 2 other friends, it's a totally selfish play.
Yeah, for sure.
2s, 3s, RSS. It's all about solo queue RBGs. We're gonna have the same thing. People are gonna leave mid game, and there's no backfill.
Yeah,
So,
I wonder that I'm actually quite concerned about that specifically
me too.
because I can see that being a big issue. There's probably going to be a lot of levers. I'm sure it's going to happen more frequently. Just also because of the nature of the game mode,
Yeah.
right? Solo shuffle, at least it feeds you the action sort of like in these waves. Like RBGs are sort of this long build up, right? And so say say you just got capped on, right, by a rogue, and it's the end of the game. Like I could definitely see someone being really frustrated at that and just like AFKing out, like after they make a little misplay.
Well, especially
So
if they don't want to lose MMR. Yeah.
or if they don't like someone on the other team, yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's
If you queue in and there's somebody that you don't, that happens in RSS, where people have talked about that, where like a healer doesn't like them, and whenever they're in the lobby with them, the healer will just hands off keyboard, not do anything, but then full sweaty mode.
Supposedly that happened to Foxy Llama at the very last lobby of the season.
Yep.
Where the enemy priest just left and basically prevented Foxy Llama from getting rank 1 just with that alone. So yeah, that's something that should be addressed for sure.
Well, that was happening all throughout the season, where people were, they die on purpose or not help out the team and then go full sweaty mode against the person they didn't like, right? I think, what did I say? I think that will be an issue. I remember with way back in the day, if you put somebody on your hate list, on your ignore list, then you would no longer queue with them into random dungeons if you just do dungeon queue. And I want to say that carries over to PvP, but it's only on the character though, right? It's not on the BNet. So you'd have to, and I think ignore lists are capped to a certain amount. So I mean, you can only ignore so many people.
Maybe that's why. So I've seen some players complain that they have really long queue times. And every time I play a DPS, I mean, sure, the queue times are long, but I've never had like a 45-minute queue. At like, I mean, granted, I'm not that high rating on my DPS typically, but I wonder if that's just because they have a lot of players on high rating.
Well,
I'm sorry, a lot of players on ignore. My bad. Like that are high rated,
or they're ignored by a bunch of people because they might be toxic, and so they have Anyway, I don't know. I feel again, if we ever have a dev on, that's like going to be one question I ask. Eventually, someday we'll get confirmation, but I feel like that's a thing, and if it isn't, I think it should be a thing. I think something that's not used enough is ignore lists. I don't think a lot of people do that.
Yeah,
they face tank the toxicity, and they're like, meh, okay, on to the next queue, because there's so many people in queue that until you get to those upper echelons where there's such a small pool, chances of you playing against that or with that other person is kind of slim.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Is there anything else about MMR we haven't talked about?
To go on a sort of a little, what should you take away from this as a viewer? I don't think you should be, because I think a lot of people get confused at MMR. They get mad, they get frustrated, they feel certain ways about it, and I understand that. But I really think that the important thing is just to press Q, and there's nothing like the MMR is not designed to like punish you. I mean, in some ways, I guess it might be, but it's not like the game is like you're doomed, right? If you have low MMR, if you simply win more than you lose, that MMR will go up, your current rating will go up. So even if you have low MMR now, just play the game, get better, see improvements, and eventually it'll go up. So I think there's a lot of people who tend to have a lot of anxiety and frustration with the system, but just play. don't think too much about it. That's my takeaway.
I will also say there's the other side to it where if you are not working hard to improve, then you are going to feel that brunt when you switch over seasons, because if you out of the artificial inflation and the natural inflation over a season, let's say you make it 1800, part of that is actually being boosted by the system. So at season beginning, you may not actually be an 1800 player. You may be like a 1600 player. And so because you haven't learned, you're not learning from your losses, you're not learning, you're just playing the game. So
Yeah.
there's a chance you're going to take that first brunt, you're going to lose a bunch of MMR, you're going to lose a bunch of CR, and you're actually going to go back to kind of where you belong until the system bolsters you and pushes you back up to that spot where you're being kind of inflated to.
Yeah, you have to prove to Blizzard that
Mhm.
you deserve the rating ultimately.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't like to hear.
All right.
But yeah, I remember I didn't like hearing it when I was, back in my day when I was a young gamer. But yeah, it is what it is. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the most infamous part of our show, somewhat self-serving in this case, since we've already kind of talked about some things that we would like to maybe do to fix MMR. So I think maybe we'll just open it up to all of World of Warcraft. Big. If you could change one thing, what would it be about World of Warcraft?
Gosh, I don't know. Whatever it takes to get more people playing into PvP. I don't know what it is. It's cosmetics. If it's I don't know. I want more people. I want more of these people who are only Mythic Plus players to have a reason to play PvP, because we've seen from countless videos now that the number of people playing Mythic Plus is significantly larger than the number of people playing PvP. So it'd be nice to sort of shift that balance in some way. And so whatever it takes to get more people interested in PvP, I don't know what that is. But that would be what I would change. Get more PvEers in the mix.
Sure. I would like to see some charts of what participation is regionally, not global numbers, because I feel like there's some nuance there.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would change, uh, we've said it before, I'm going to recycle it, is a PvP tutorial mode. It's something that teaches people. Sandbox, something along those lines to really.
Ooh. Let me tease something really quick, if you don't mind.
Oh, are you?
But
Are you ready to tease that?
I guess you already know about it to some degree. But Skill Capped is making an add-on that will hopefully reduce the barrier of entry to PvP. The add-on is, I'm not going to talk too much about it. I don't want to reveal too much, but it'll basically make it easier to understand your UI in Arena, no matter what your rating is. And so I think I'm very excited for it. It's something that I think can do a lot for the game if people choose to use it. And I think they should. No, not biased. But I'm very excited for this add-on, which should hopefully be coming out in the next few weeks, maybe even next week. I don't know.
Ooh, I look forward to it. I remember we talked about it offline, and yeah, I saw. I was like, oh, this is going to be neat.
Yeah.
So, and UI is, I mean, we talk about it. I don't think we really said it specifically, but World of Warcraft is really a game of information. And
Right.
if you don't have the right information at the right time to make the proper decision, you die.
Yes. And
PvE, PvP, it's the same thing.
the goal with our add-on is to make sure you have the right the information you need.
Mm-hmm. The next trick is having people know what the good decision is.
Right.
An add-on that can tell you what to do that's the right decision at the right time, that's money. Oh wait, that's a bot.
Yes.
All right. PvP news. Let's do it.
All right. Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
Alrighty. Couple events that happened in the last few weeks. There was Keystone Masters, I think now Keystone Productions, did the Battle of the Bands. So that was a really fun tournament to watch over the 13th and the 14th of April. Quick congratulations to Pirate Pete's and Team Liquid for winning EU and NA respectively. Kudos to them. Really fun tournament. Really kind of cool. Banning maps, banning specs. Obviously, with that, there's some lulls. So the time frame between matches to get the matches going was a little bit long. Not gonna lie, but it was still very fun to watch. And Team Liquid actually on the NA side, they got knocked down and they had to battle their way back up through the lower ladder to come back up and then take out the team that knocked them down. So
I'm just curious because I didn't watch the tournament. Was in most matchups was something consistently banned, or did it kind of the bans change from matchup to matchup?
I see. I can't really say because I didn't watch EU. I only caught like the tail end of it, and I only watched part of NA. I want to say map wise, yeah, it was consistent. Like it was like Blade's Edge was always, or Mugambala was always. I think. Well, yeah. So it's more. I guess it's not really that they banned maps; it's that they picked the maps that they wanted to play. I think it's a better way to say it. I think Tiger Peak was like one that was only played like towards the end of and like the best of 7 kind of thing. So it's definitely a lot of the same maps. As far as specs though, I can't say that. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch it all again. Thanks, Big. Something I didn't watch, but I will give a shout out to was the Armed Forces Dungeon League AFDL. They hosted a Mythic Plus tournament as well on the 13th and the 14th of April. And huge congrats to Team US Army Esports for taking the W. So good for them. Hot fixes. Lots and lots of hot fixes. Nothing for retail, really.
Yeah.
Also, I want to throw a big raspberry at Lika because I think he has an alert for all the blue notes. So every time there's a blue post put out, he's immediately posting stuff. He's like, "Hey, PvP tuning." I'm like, "What?" And then freaking it's SOD. Bastard. All right.
Yeah.
On that, so Season of Discovery is getting PvP tuning regularly. Makes sense. Retail, not so much so. I think the only tuning that we've seen was the tuning that hit. I wouldn't say it's hotfix, is the tuning that came with Season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it Fistweavers got nerfed. And Disc Priest Atonement got buffed.
Yep.
And everybody who plays Disc bemoaned that because they think that's not how it should happen, but it seems to be what keeps happening.
Yeah, they've it's a kind of a meme at this point. They've buffed atonement healing like 8 times.
Yep.
Like Disc Priest still don't like it. I think I'm not joking. I made this whole video about how PvP has basically become, Mythic Plus and class design seems to be focused on Mythic Plus. I mean, that I think right there is just proof of it. Like, right in Mythic Plus, I mean, Disc Priests were owning last season for a while
Yep.
because you can actually atonement heal. You know, that is going to be a consistent source of healing, but you can't really do that in PvP because of CC interrupts, whatever. You know, it's way more annoying to try to have that playstyle.
I feel like if you want to equate the two together, I feel like Disc Priest healing would do extremely well in, well, obviously in BGs because you have more people, more players that you're hitting, but also in arena if you're against a pet class, so like BM hunters or demo locks, because you can get all the hot ticks, basically all the your oh, what's the name of it now? The fire, the dot you
Purge the
put on.
Wicked.
Purge the Wicked, yeah, because that actually, as a dot, which it essentially becomes a hot tick for atonement, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of goofy interactions that happen with multi-target things. Like I know Ellie and Enhancement Shamans, they have a passive with their Primordial Wave where depending on the amount of targets hit by their Ascendants, I don't remember exactly how it works, they get a haste buff, stacking up to 6. So every time I talk to Swapsy, he tells me how amazing he feels as an Ellie Shaman against like BM Hunters and Demo Warlocks because he basically gets a 60% Bloodlust every time he presses Primordial Wave. So there's like these weird, you know, again, Mythic Plus. These are all designed to be good in Mythic Plus, and they just kind of spill over into PvP because they're with priests. There is a talent that causes Purge the Wicked to spread to nearby targets when you penance the target with Purge the Wicked. So yeah, there you go. You know, and the interesting how this all works out.
Indeed. That's interesting. I didn't know about that about shamans, but that makes a lot of sense too. But yeah, yes. I feel like again, like I'm so glad that we have PvP tuning on abilities where they, you know, we're not as held to PvE, but I think this is that new stage we're at where I hate to say it, but maybe there's a time where we have, you know, just the PvP side of the game and it has its own different talents and its own way the specs play there, and then you have your PvE side that has that other side, or just or people just have to admit the fact that if it's going to be the way it is right now, where everything's formed to Mythic Plus, and we just kind of play another game that uses that same mechanics, then there's a bunch of classes you just can't play because they just don't fit well.
Right. Yeah, like Frosty K. Yeah.
Don't tell Zeke
Frosty K
that,
doesn't really work. Frosty K doesn't really work in Mythic Plus either. No. So I don't know what's going on with that class. I think it's actually good in raids. I don't remember. Maybe Unholy's good in. I don't remember. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not sure. I think Frosty K is pretty good, but I think Unholy still outdoes it, just general damage and everything. So
Unholy always scales insane with like, oh my god, power infusion.
Yeah.
Last night Choice was showing me. It wasn't last night. It was 2 nights ago. Choice and I were talking because he's been making videos for the Skill Cap PV stuff, and he showed me because he used to be a analyst for Big Dumb Gaming. Rest in peace. Yeah. And he showed me a spreadsheet, like the old spreadsheets he had from their PTR testing and how they test stuff on the PTR, and it was really interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but what they do is they basically have their entire guild log on the PTR, and they all go to a target dummy, and they all turn on details or whatever. Someone is logging all the information, and they basically blast a target dummy for 5 minutes straight.
Okay.
And then they do some other tests with that too. Like they give maybe each time they perform a bunch of 5-minute tests, and one time they'll power infusion one target, another time they'll power infusion a different target. They'll repeat this at different time intervals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like so interesting because they log all this information to basically figure out, okay, what's our raid comp going to look like in the new tier? When are we going to PI people? Who are we going to PI? It was all like quite fascinating information to me. I mean, it's funny because no one is doing anything remotely like that in PvP. I know. I mean, Seadu's team historically always pulls out some like little tricks, with gearing and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like I it got me thinking. Like, there's probably a lot we don't optimize in Arena that we probably could.
Nope.
Maybe the game mode is just too hectic for that. But geez, like seeing a spreadsheet of all this data was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That's
I think
crazy.
it's so much like obviously there's people that go on PTR and they'll blast a target, change some talents, maybe change their gear so they're haste heavy instead of mastery heavy or whatever. And I think they do that and do some numerology math, but I definitely we don't do it. I haven't seen a threes team stand in front of a PvP dummy and blast it. I would say that's cautionary though because the PvP dummies don't test properly.
Yeah, jeez, that's so annoying. By the way, like,
I know.
and it's weird because like some abilities are so just unbelievably, they hit unbelievably hard on the target dummies, and then they just do nothing against actual players.
Yep.
Um,
It's like the
so
PvP tuning doesn't work properly on the test dummy or something. I don't know.
I mean, some people have said, oh, it's because target dummies don't have versatility. I think it's way more than that, because to put it in perspective, if I Kingsbane, if I play my assassination rogue in Kingsbane, the target dummy, it will do over 1,000,000 total damage. If I Kingsbane in Arena, it will do like 300k damage. That's a big difference. That's way more than 40% versatility. There's something else going on there for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not armor because Kingsbane is nature damage. I have no idea how these calculations work.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's all I know is that don't trust your numbers on a PvP test dummy.
Oh, I've fallen victim to trusting those numbers many times. Like,
uh, I think so. Well, yeah, I was gonna say season 4 updates, but that's what we already just talked about is Disc Priest and Mistweavers. That's about the only thing PvP there. MOP, the remix, MOP remix is happening.
yeah.
I haven't seen anything specific about PvP. It seems very PvE centric. Like, basically
Yeah.
log in, quick level, and then run a bunch of dungeons, run raids. I don't know. I honestly I was really hoping we would see original Deepling Gorge. I wanted to see
Oh,
that.
yeah, that would be fun. That was an
Right?
amazing map. They need to
It
bring that
was.
back.
I wish, but I haven't heard or seen anything there, and it's probably too late. So, oh well. Last couple things. Actually, I'm gonna rearrange this a little bit. I got the hiccups all of a sudden. Plunderstorm, got the end announced is going to be on the 30th of April. In the meantime, Renowned was buffed, so it's coming back. I think it's like twice as much again from each match. And
Yep.
now all of a sudden you have duels and trios now. So if you are still trying to grind out your Renown for all those bells and whistles and pixels, get a couple friends, hop in there, get a bunch of wins, enjoy, profit.
Yep.
Battle with the Blues. They're gonna have a Battle of the Blues on the 26th of April for RBGs, and this is over on the Cata Classic beta. So they want to get a bunch of people over there doing rated battlegrounds just to make sure that it's working properly for Cata Classic and there's no bugs. Chances are there's going to be a bunch of bugs. It's going to be fun. PTR testing is going to be happening, and if you do not have the classic beta for Cata Classic, don't worry. There is a massive wave of invites will be going out according to Kavex over on the forums. So make sure you're signed up for it, and maybe you will get that. And last but not least, I know we were tweeting about it a bunch. Well, I think you tweeted a few things as well. But hey, we got the War Within Alpha has finally been released. I got alpha access. I think you got alpha access too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know Jake did. So the three of us all got it. That said, I haven't seen anything. So there was no interviews that were PvP specific. There was PvP stuff talked about on interviews because the devs wanted to talk about the new battleground, the Deep Hall Ravine. They're very proud of that. It's going to be a mixture of Silver Shard mines with a Arathi Basin. So what does that mean? It means it's so as far as I understand it, there's carts. So there's cart escort, and then there's a gem in the middle. So I'm guessing that gem in the middle is kind of a Arathi Basin. It's gain resources from that, and then otherwise you gain resources by escorting and owning the carts. So should be a fun one. Looks like it's got Z access as well. So you have your horizontal and your vertical, and overall should be a really fun map to play. I think the other thing, being on the beta or being on the alpha, I didn't get into leveling quite yet because I logged in. I saw they didn't have any PvP vendors. You couldn't queue for instanced PvP other than skirms. Like the unrated stuff you could queue for, but rated stuff you couldn't. So
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed by that. Obviously, you can go in duel, but I'm pretty sure level is capped 73 because they're right now they're just focused on leveling and making sure the zones feel good and the quests feel good in that. So
Yep.
I'm a little less energetic to hop in there and just go power leveling for.
Yeah, that's. I don't enjoy leveling on a beta server or alpha server, to be honest. I mean, I understand there's a lot of people like that stuff, but man, I would rather just get right into the belly of the beast.
Right, me too. Well, I understand I get why they do it, right? And so I think next week they're going to open up another section, or sorry, really this week they're going to open up another section, and the next section next week. So hopefully we'll get max level shortly. That said, it usually, like typical to beta in that you have to actually level through the whole game on this test server before you can do the end game content. You don't just like have a max level 2 and poof, have fun. So it's something I hate about that is because same as you, I want to just test the end game stuff. I don't want to level for something that's going to get deleted once they shut down the server. Like that's just pissed me off.
Right.
I think the other thing for news, and this is from the data mining that has come from the various data mining spots, PvP gems and files. So, and also there's going to be it looks like an item that jewel crafters can make where we can add gem slots or sockets to our gear. So War Within, we're not going to have vault anymore for PvP. Hallelujah. Therefore, we're not going to be able to earn the coins that we can then buy gem sockets for. So we're at the, I wonder how much those are going to run on the auction house. Probably a pretty penny. But these PvP gems and the files, I'm not sure about them. I see precog is back.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Minus, was it 15% damage reduction when in a CC?
Yeah, that was a thing in BFA. I don't remember what it was called in BFA. Yeah. I remember that thing.
Yeah. I don't know, man. What do you think about these things?
I don't like the reduced damage, and because it used to be increased verse in stuns. I think that was it made the game really look really weird. I remember it was like Rogue Mage, right? The comp that kills and stuns. It was really goofy because I remember they would stun someone and not really do damage, and then do the damage after the stun ended. Like there's those like weird PvE trinkets too, like the bike they would shoot out at people, or the spikes. I don't remember what they're all called.
Yeah.
But Melee used those. Anyway, I think it made the game look weird. I
It
don't
did.
typically these things that interact with that you can do while stunned. I've never been a fan of those things. Even though
Yeah.
getting stunned is annoying, it's like, you know, monks can port while stunned. Mages can blink out of stun if they're playing blink. You know, it feels kind of weird.
What I wonder is if it's going to have an internal cooldown.
Interesting. Yeah. Because if it doesn't, I mean, that's going to make some things feel pretty tanky against these stuns.
Yep. And we talked about before all the micro CC, right? So
Right.
like, can you imagine? I'd hate to be a warlock. You dot something up. You got your dots rolling and everything, and then somebody decides to like chain a bunch of micro CC on the target, and so your dots don't do anything.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. You just gave me a PTSD. I had a because I've been playing my rogue and I play assassination rogue,
Yep.
right? A dot based spec. And then the other day I had a Destro warlock on my team,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned this is that seduce from a succubus removes dots, which is the most
That makes
infuriating way to have your dots get removed. So I basically I opened on this resto druid, forced trinket and barkskin, you know, whatever. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna basically kill him next time. So I waited for DRs. I did my omega damage, which is like dance, King's Bane, Death Mark, and then I just hear this little chime off to the side, and I see the succubus appear and instantly seduce off all of my damage. And I was like, oh
no.
my god, no, don't do it.
No.
No.
What was that? Somebody was saying on Twitter, was it the shine or whatever? The
Yeah,
blind. It also removes all the dots.
it does. Yeah, that was me who tweeted that. I
Oh,
swear.
was that you? Okay. Shoot.
Paladin,
you
Paladins. I don't know what it is. There's something about them where they just see a bunch of nameplates stacked up,
Yep.
and it doesn't matter. They're like, okay, now I should blind, and it's like you know, half the targets will be DR'd, half of them will be dotted, and it's like, no, like we're AOEing right here. Don't blind everything. There's no point. It happens all the time.
Clearly, they have no idea what that even happens. I didn't know that happened, but the only time I use it is on my prop paladin in Mythic Plus. So I don't know if it has the same interaction. Anyway, so on that, obviously, there's a bunch more information about the War Within that's coming out. If you're looking for PvP specific stuff, it probably won't be spoken about until much later into the beta, because that's about when we really start seeing that stuff come through. Because right now everything's PvE centered. So that said, I'm expecting that once the beta gets up and running, once the new BG is actually available on that PTR, we'll probably see a play with the blues for that. And I am super, super looking forward to that. Another thing I am looking forward to, though, is Big's shout out for the week.
My shout out for the week. I'm gonna shout out Gizmo again. I know I shout out Gizmo before, but that guy just keeps on cranking out weird little add-ons, and you know, he's always in the lab doing stuff to make his UI crazy. I think he just released a new add-on that it's like some version of Omni CD or Omnibar that, you know, if a cooldown is coming back up from an enemy player, it will sort of flash to indicate, oh, this thing is coming back up. Get ready for it. So you know, he's always making cool things, very practical things, and you know, I'm sure, you know, one of these days, one of his add-ons is going to pop off, become the next big thing. So shout out to Gizmo.
Cool. That sounds like. Can you? We should share that. We should probably tweet it or something like that. Get it out there. Let people know, because that sounds like a really awesome add-on, an excellent iteration on Omni. For shout outs, I am going to just do a general shout out to the listeners. I love you all. You make it so worthwhile to do this. And thank you for being awesome. And I guess also to Skillcapped, because they support us somewhat when you support them. So if you go over and use our affiliate link to Skillcapped, you get a discount to their fees, and we get a little kickback because they know that we sent you. So hey, all those are awesome. Things that are also awesome are the places where people can find us on the interwebs. Big, could you please list those off for the kind people that have lasted this long on our podcast?
Oh, absolutely, I can do that. So you can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Bonus Rolls production Discord. Also, you can visit the Bonus Rolls website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at bonusroll.gg. This directory also has a review system, so head over there and tell everyone what you think about your favorite shows.
Indeed. And as always, links for everything we talked about are going to be in the show notes. I want to thank you all for listening and have a good night. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.